Hi, this is Robin, and in this video I'm going to be talking about and demonstrating how to create a surreal solarization effect in Photoshop. Now, there are a number of different types of surreal photographic methods and approaches out there, and I thought it would be too much to do in one video. So for this part one video, I'm going to focus on solarization as what I think is a pretty easy to master surrealist style in Photoshop. And I'll demonstrate more intermediate approaches, including Photoshop compositing, in next month in the second part, or the part two, of my How to Create Surrealism Effects video set. Now, in this video, I'll give a very brief background on Surrealism and define solarization in the introduction, since that's the focus of this video. And then I'll walk through step-by-step demos that feature two different solarization methods that we can use in Photoshop, one filter-based and one curves-based. And then I'll also show two different hue styles, so in other words, color styles. So one approach will be color-based and one will be black and white. And just to give you a sense, this is how a solarized color look can turn out. And this is an example using Man Ray here of a black and white solarized photograph. So those are just some examples of the kinds of things that we're going to learn how to do here. Now, just for basis of information for you when you're working with your own images, solarization effects I've found work best in Photoshop with contrasty starting images that have very simple, clean lines and backgrounds. So don't use anything too cluttered or with too many details, or it just won't work out as well. I will include the start times with links to each topic in the video in the description below the video, and I'll also put links to any stock photos that I use there too, in case you want to try the same step-by-step approaches I use on those two two graphics to start, or two images to start, before you want to leap into trying your own. Okay, if you're new to my channel or you haven't subscribed yet and you want to be notified of my future Photoshop workshops, please click the free subscribe button and the black bell notification icon below this video to get a single notification from YouTube when I release new content each month. Now, if you've already subscribed, there's no need to click again. You just do it once and you're all set. So with that said, let me dive into the brief introduction. And as I said, if you want to listen to this the first time, just to kind of get the context for what we're doing here, and then want to just focus on the demos going forward, I'll have the links below the video so you can hop around as you like. Okay, so introduction. So Surrealism is an early 20th century art movement that explores the unconscious mind, dreams, and irrational juxtapositions in imagery. It's really meant to stimulate or evoke emotional responses from viewers. Now, it was influenced by Sigmund Freud's theories on the subconscious, and so again, a lot of dream-like or fantastical types of activity in Surrealism. A Surrealist Manifesto was written by Andre Breton in October of 1924, and he defined Surrealism as, quote, pure psychic automatism, end quote. And in other words, it was intended or aimed to free art and writing from rational constraints. So he didn't want people overthinking things. He wanted them to just feel something and express it, or if they had a dream, to reflect it. So it's almost the antithesis of anything documentary, in the sense that it's free-spirited and from the subconscious and dreams. Okay. Now, the 100th anniversary of the Surrealist Manifesto was in October 2024. And I'm a fan of Surrealism in all sorts of fine art, not just photography. So it made me want to explore some of the fantastical, surreal, fine art photography effects that can be achieved in Photoshop, and then to share them with other photographers, designers, and digital artists like you, without you having to go to or purchase any the plugins to achieve the effects. So that is my really top level definition and overview of surrealism. Now, let me again just give a quick high level definition of solarization in photography, since that's what the focus of this video is going to be, is using the surreal solarization effect. So it is a technique in which an image is reversed in tones. So dark and light areas of an image blend in unusual ways, and they just flip from what they normally would be in an image. The technique was discovered accidentally by Man Ray and Lee Miller in the 1920s. And it happened when he turned on a white light in his darkroom while developing film negatives. And then once he saw what it did, he continued to purposefully do that to achieve the effect. So in doing that, he popularized the technique of solarization for photography. Now, it doesn't have to just be a darkroom technique. Solarization effects can be achieved digitally too, and that's what I'm going to show you how to achieve using Photoshop. So in demo number 1 of the 2 demos that I'm going to do in this video, I'll demonstrate a couple step-by-step approaches using color photo. Okay, so let me pause the video and get set up for demo number 1 on creating a color solarized photo. Hold on. So this will be demo number 1 on how to create a color solarized photo. And I'm going to show 2 methods or approaches in this demo number 1. One will be filter based and the other will be curves based. And I'll be working with this stock photo. It is from the stock site called Pexels, and I will try to include the link to this in the description below the video in case you'd like to try following along with this same image before you experiment on your own. Okay, and just so you know, if you're not familiar with my setup that I use, my layers panel is over here on the upper right, properties panel lower right, and I have my toolbar docked right, so everything's nice and convenient together here. So to start, let's duplicate our background layer in the layers panel so we're not working on the original. You can left click and drag it to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new layer icon, which is that box with the plus, and you get a copy. Or on that background layer, you can do a Control or Command J to jump up a copy that way. Either way, they work the same way. So for this first approach, what I wanted to do was, in fact, let me just duplicate this again so we can do this. And this is going to be using the Solarize filter. Okay, and by the way, if you want to label your layers so you can keep track of them, you just double click on the words to do that. Okay, so the Solarized filter is very quick, and if you like your results, that's great because it is very quick, but there is no ability to alter your results other than perhaps to lower the opacity. So let me just show you how that works. So top of the interface, let's go to the filter menu right up here on the upper left. Click on that. Come down to stylize. Here we go, stylize. So filter, stylize, and then fly out and come down to where it says solarize. So filter, stylize, solarize, left click, and just wait, and there you go. So it's solarizing for you. So it has changed light things in the image to dark and dark things in the image to light, and you can see it's created very unusual colors, and this is typical of a surreal solarization kind of a look. But as I said, you can see it just processes and produces a result. You have no control over it. If you want to go back over here to the layers panel on the right, you can come across to where it says opacity and left click and drag if you want to lower the opacity of the result, you know, to make it a little less intense. And by the way, so I like to left click and drag on the word just to do the slider effect, but if you prefer, you can click on that little down arrow and then just pull the slider that way too. Okay. So if you want to temper what the 100% approach was, then you can do that. And then let me just pull it back up to 100%. But as I said, there's no altering that. That's it. So if you like the look, feel free to use that. So I'm going to turn that off, and we're going to show the second approach that I talked about, which is to use a curves layer. So curves should give you a lot more control. So again, bottom of the layers panel, this time we're going to come down to this circle with the line, which is the add new adjustment layer. And we're going to come down to where it says curves and left click on that, and we get a curves layer. And let me just drag this below here so that we don't get confused where we are here. Okay, so we have a curves layer, and associated with that layer in the properties panel is the curve that you'll be working with. So what we want to do is place points on the curve. So here's the curve, and curves, if you're not familiar, runs from dark to light, from left to right on the x-axis, and from dark to light on the y-axis. Okay, so what we're going to do is place some points on the center point right here, and then on the quarter point here, and then on the 3/4 point here. All right, now what we're going to do is grab this point that represents the black point down here in the lower left-hand corner and drag it all the way up to the top of the curve. Okay, so you can see it's already made some alterations to your image. So now we're going to come over to that center point and drag that up. And let's see, maybe I'll come up part way here till I see where I want to be. I'm just going to come up to about here till I see where I want to be. Okay, and then I want to drag these other points. So what I'm trying to form here is, as opposed to that nice straight curve or our usual S kind of curve that you aim for in a curve, we're trying to get a W kind of a shape. So I'm going to then grab this point here and watch the image, and you can see we're getting, and you can drag it to more. So this way goes more to the, if I drag this to the right, if you watch where my green highlighter is here on the curve, I'm getting a more blue look. If I come to the left, I get a more coppery look. So the point being, you can have the ability to just drag it where you want to taste. So let's pull this up and see what happens here. Okay, so you can see it's lightening some of the areas of the image, and you can pull it slightly over. So you can see as I'm moving it left and right from where I initially put the point, it's making alterations to the image. So you can see you have a lot more flexibility than that filter gave you. So I can't give you a formula. You just have to watch the image as you make these alterations and then decide for yourself and for your image what kind of a look you want. But again, it is meant to be surreal or odd or dreamlike or something, you know, that you'd see in a dream, or something that would be not realistic in a normal sense of the word. I think I like a little bit more blue in mine. So anyway, once you get this W kind of shape with your curve, then, and you like the look of how the image is going, then that's basically what you're finished. You've done it. You've created the solarized look. Now, once you get a look you like, and perhaps you'll be creating an image in a series, you may want to create a preset so that you can apply the same kind of look again without having to go through all these gyrations of moving the curves around. So if you do want to create a preset for a look you create, here in the properties panel, come right over to this, what I call the little hamburger menu, those little series of dashed lines. Left click on that and come down to where it says Save Curves Preset, and left click on that. And then all you have to do is you'll get this pop up down where it says Untitled and .acv. Do not change the extension, but you can just, I'm not going to do it because I've already saved some here that I want, and this will just, but you can type something like, I'll just do it just so you can see, like test. So give your curve a name. So you might want to say more copper surrealism or more blue surrealism, you know, whatever descriptive name you want to give your curve preset, you can do that. I'll hit cancel. But then when you come to the presets over here, the next time you want to work with a different image, you should have down here, and here's one with my initials, Solarized copper. So let's see if I click that. There you go. See, it changed it to my preset that I had already saved. So you can reapply it to other images very easily if you save a preset for your curve. Okay, and I'll just leave that now because we've changed that here. Now, optionally, if your colors are not punchy enough for your taste, you can also add a vibrance adjustment layer, and that would be another way to add some a little bit more oomph or impact to your surreal solarization. So again, bottom of the layers panel, come down to the add new adjustment layer icon, that circle with the line, come down to where it says vibrance, left click on that. And then again, in the associated properties panel for that layer, you can see you have both a vibrance and a saturation slider. So if you want to add some more vibrance, which is usually more subtle, then you can pull that to the right. If you want less vibrance, pull it to the left. Okay, if you want to add a little bit more saturation, you can pull that to the right too. Okay, or if you want to crank up the vibrance by pulling it to the right a little bit and then temper it by lowering some of the saturation, you can do that too. So you can just play with these things to taste, all right? So another thing that you could do, and again, another optional thing, and because we're talking about surrealism, we're not talking about realistic kinds of things, you can see that, you know, it did very odd things here anyway. So another thing you might want to try is left clicking and dragging your original image to the top of the layer stack. So whatever is on top in the layer stack in Photoshop will hide or be sort of it'll hide everything below it at this point. Let me just put it that way. Okay. So when we drag this up, this is going to be there again. So we're going to left click and drag it all the way to the top. All right, so now we've got our starting image there, and as I said, it hides what's below it. But we want to hide her and just show her eyes into that surreal image. How about that? Because I love these dark sort of cat eyes here. So in order to hide this original image so that we can just paint those eyes in selectively, you don't want to go erasing around the whole thing. That would take forever. So we want to add a black layer mask. So here's a white layer mask, and so it's revealing everything that happened on that layer. We want to put a black layer mask to hide everything on this layer. So press and hold the Alt or the Option key, come to the bottom of the Layers panel and click on the Add New Layer Mask icon right there. And you can see now we're back to that same effect that we had on the previous layer because the black is hiding that image. So now we want to paint on that black mask with white to reveal just the eyes. So be sure you're painting on the mask and not on the thumbnail. So you'll know the mask is active if there's a white frame around it. Come down to the toolbar, yours might be on the left, and click on the brush tool. It looks like a little paintbrush, left click, and you see it's active because of the black. Then come down further to the color pickers and be sure you're painting with white to reveal on what's hidden with black. You can click either the X or this little two-headed arrow to flip it so that white is the foreground color. Okay, and then and the green is my highlighter, the white in the center is my brush. So I'm gonna maybe zoom in a little so we can see what we're doing a little better here. And I'm just going to, first I'll make this a little smaller brush with my left bracket key. Okay, and I'm just gonna start painting to reveal just her eyes. And you can see where the eyes are because it still showed up. And I'll do the other eye. And I'm using a mouse, so it's a little bit clunky here. Okay, and then if you want to look, we can look at the mask here. So I'll press Alt or Option and click on the mask so you can see the only thing that's being revealed is the eyes. If you want to soften them a little bit more for that same active layer, you know it's active because it has the blue, come down to the property or go up to wherever yours is, to the properties panel and pull the feather slider to the right a little bit to soften it up. Okay, there we go. Now, if I zoom back out again, you can see, so not only do we have the solarization effect, which is already pretty surreal, but now we've also got the live eyes there from the original model. And so that I'm going to consider finished with those two extra optional steps here. So if you look, we can look at the before and that's solarized color version of the after version of this image. And we get that surreal look. So that is the end. You can see it's a very fast process. So even if you don't just use the filter approach and use the curves approach, it's still very fast. So that is the end of demo number 1 for how to create a surreal solarization effect in color. And I will pause the video and set up for the second demo, and we'll do a little bit different approach to get a black and white looking solarized photo. So hold on again. Okay, so now this is demo number 2, and in this second demo, I'm going to show how to create a black and white surreal solarized photo look. Now, again, this is a stock photo. This one is from Pixabay, and as I mentioned right up front in the introduction area, it does work best to create these solarized looks with contrasty images that are not too cluttered, very simple lines. So you can see there's a lot of contrast in this image. Now, I am doing these demos with 2 different portrait photos, but don't feel compelled to have to just do this with portraits. You can do it with any subject that can have a lot of contrast and have sort of simple lines. You could do it with pets, you could do it with objects, bottles, glass, whatever, flowers, whatever it is that you want to work with. Okay, so let's do the process again. So again, it's always the first step. Let's duplicate this background layer. So this time I will do a Control or Command J to jump that up and make a copy of the background. Okay, and again, you have the option that if you prefer, you can left click on that and drag it down to the box with the plus, which is the new layer icon. All right, so now, since we're going to be doing this as a black and white solarized look, we're going to add a black and white adjustment layer. So bottom of the layers panel to the add new adjustment layer icon, the circle with the line, and come down to where it says black and white, and left click on that. So we have a black and white adjustment layer here. Now you can either, in the properties panel that is associated with that active blue highlighted layer, you can either leave it on the default preset, which is what it's showing here now, or if you want to experiment with yours and move some of the sliders around. So for instance, I could conceivably maybe move some of the red. If we look at her, you can see there's reds, there's some yellows in her skin. She's got sort of a magenta color lipstick. So, if I wanted to play around with it, I could move the red slider, the yellow and magenta, and probably see some changes to the image. But I'm just going to leave this on the default for now for the black and white layer adjustment and say, okay, we're now in black and white. So now we're going to do the same thing we did with the color. Next, we're going to add a curves adjustment layer. So bottom of the layers panel, add new adjustment layer icon, come down to curves and left click. And now we've got a new active curves layer with the curve in the properties panel. So last time for the color image, I showed you that with the curve, you could create a W kind of a shape, and you certainly can do it here too. But I just want to show you a different kind of look, and then you can decide for your image whether you want to do a U or a W kind of a shape with the curve. Okay, so again, I'm going to put the black point down here at the lower left all the way up to the upper left. So I think that's kind of the critical first step. So now I'm going to come to this next vertical line over here in the curve, and I'm going to start dragging that down to form the left side of a U, and I'm just watching. It's always watch the image and see if it's doing things you like. Okay, so I sort of like what this is doing with the hair. We're getting kind of a negative look there. All right, so then we're going to come over to the 50%, what I call the 50% line. So the next line, vertical line over, and I want to drag that up more because we're going to make this U, as I said. So this is the U that we're forming here rather than doing a W. Okay. Now, let's see here. Where do I want to go next? So next I'm going to come over to this third vertical line and see what we get there. All right, so now that I've gotten a basic look, let me start fiddling a little bit more with these points on the curve and seeing if I can get a more interesting look out of this. Because I've got my basic U shape. All right, and I can try going left and right and seeing what it does. I like it when there's a little bit more dark coming in for mine. Okay. And try pulling this down. So I'm just pulling this up and down and left and right, and I'm watching the image to see if I can get a sort of an interesting look there. All right, so I think I will leave this one here. So now I've got my solarized black and white look. So, I mean, I've really done it. If you remember the example I showed with Man Ray, this starts to look a lot. And again, it's got a very surreal kind of a look to it. So now if you want to add a little bit more tonal boost to your image, and again, it's optional, you could stop like right there, and that's already a black and white solarized photo look. But let's just say you want to add a little bit more tonal boost. So what I would recommend for that is bottom of the layers panel, add new adjustment layer icon, that circle with the line, and come down. Let's use levels since we just worked with curves. So we've got a new levels adjustment layer. So again, in the properties panel for that layer, we can start moving around some of the handles below the histogram here. So let me start maybe moving the black one over and see what I get. And then I often will do this and then just adjust it some more after I get things to a certain point. Yeah, there we go. That's getting that a little bit more emphasis to it. I'll back off some of the blacks over here. Okay, and then I'll try some whites. A little bit much. Just see, I go back and forth and then just play with them till I see what I like. It's all trial and error. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, but you can see, and then, so that's just working with the histogram. You can also work with the output levels too. Let's just see if that does anything. So normally when you pull from the right to the left, your image will get darker, and from the left to the right, it gets lighter. So let's just see what happens here. Yeah, you can see. So look at the background behind her on the image. Don't have to worry because it's not a formula on the output. I'm just clicking and dragging on that handle. And if you watch the image, you can see what's happening. It's lighting up the background a little bit. And then let me try the handle under the white end of the output. Yeah, so I like that that's tempering it a little bit over there. Okay, so and again, this is optional, but you can do the tonal adjustments there, and then you can do some of the more universal output adjustments on this bar beneath the histogram if you want to. And all you have to do is drag these handles. So when you get the look that you like, then that's it. Again, you're finished. You can see how fast this is, and that's why I like being able to explore this. So again, we've got our before image, which was full color image, and we've ended up with a solarized black and white effect for our after image. Now, again, if you do want to keep playing with this more, I just like to show you optional things that you can do if you want to experiment and see what else you can achieve here. I'm just looking to see what I want to work with. So perhaps I'm looking at the image and thinking, maybe just add some overall color to it because you don't want to take away from this solarized look. So I'm thinking that if I add a color LUT, a lookup table to this, it might give an interesting effect. So bottom of the layers panel, come to the add new adjustment layer icon and come down to where it says color lookup, right down there, left click, and you get the color lookup layer and the associated properties panel. It should have it highlighted that it says 3D LUT file. So just come over to this box and click on the down arrow to see, and you might have more or less different list of lookup tables or color lookups here, LUTs as people call them, depending on whether you've downloaded any or created any of your own, but there are a batch that come just included with Photoshop if you have a shorter list. So I tend to like blue colors and cyanotypes and stuff like that. So let me just look down for one of my favorite ones here. They're alphabetical now. Yeah, so early blue. So I'll just click on that. So you can pick any of them that you're interested in and see what happens. And I'll click on that, and you can see now we've gotten that tint added to or that color overlay added to the solarized image. So that's the black and white solarized, and this is with the color tint added. So that was really all I wanted to show you with this. So that would be the end of demo number 2, and this demo was on how to create a black and white surreal solarization effect. So that was it. I was just going to do those 2 quick and easy kinds of demos for you to experiment with this time, but this was part 1 of my how to create photographic surrealism effects in Photoshop. In it, I've featured how to make surreal solarized color and black and white looks. In part 2 of the set on how to create photographic surrealism effects, next month, I'll demonstrate different dreamlike or fantastical surrealism effects and methods that you can create in Photoshop without plugins. And in that part 2, I'll also include some compositing approaches, because for those of you who might be more advanced and can do compositing, or if you're designers or digital artists, you might want to create a few separate of these individual solarized looks and then composite them together to make some kind of a collage or experiment in some way. Or you might want to create a whole surreal scene that kind of hangs together in a more storytelling way than a collaged way. So that is it for this demo. I hope you have fun experimenting with surrealism and with solarization looks, and I will see you next month. Take care.